Hello, welcome to my channel. If you are a fan of the abnormal, the paranormal, the dark, or the weird, you have come to the right place. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, and without further ado, here is our story. In 2004, my ex-husband, my two little children, and I decided to go to Seattle to visit his mother and father for a week. After being up there for a few days of visiting his family and shopping and doing some other things, some of my friends and I decided we wanted to go out for a girls' night. So we decided to go out for dinner and a movie. I didn't know the area very well as we hadn't moved there yet, which that wouldn't come till much later in life. And usually I was driven around town by my husband, my mother-in-law, or my father-in-law, or friends. So I called up my friend to get directions to her house so we could all meet up there and then go to the restaurant together. I had to have handwritten directions at that time because there was no such thing as GPS. In my directions I had written down, it said that when driving up this hill that led into the next town over, I had to turn left at the top of the hill at a traffic light. Well, I drove up to the top of the hill and got up to the very top only to find that there was no traffic light to turn at. I started to go up over the hill and still there was no light. So I looked further down the hill and still saw no light. I decided that the best course of action would be to pull over and call my friend to get some directions to her house. So I pulled off the main road onto a small dirt road that really would have been more or less considered a driveway for only about two houses. The first of which was a large, white, two-story, dilapidated house that had boards on most of the windows, and the yard was completely dead with weeds that were about as tall as me. I pulled into the driveway of the big white house since it was abandoned, and I knew I most likely wouldn't be disturbing anyone being there, seeing as there was no one there. I glanced at the house before making my call, and everything about it screamed that it was abandoned, except for the sheer white curtains that were billowing in the attic window upstairs. I pulled my cheap little cell phone out of my purse to call my friend, and as I started to dial her number, I just felt this nagging feeling that somebody was watching me. I stopped dialing for a moment and just glanced around to see who it was, but saw no one, so I shrugged it off as just a coincidence and went about my business. But all the while, I still kept having that nagging feeling that I was being watched. My friend informed me that the lights I was supposed to go to are not at the top of the hill, but about halfway up. And so I would have to go back the way I came and then turn right at the lights most of the way down the hill now. I said okay, and that I would be heading that way in a moment and would see her soon. I hung up the phone and set my phone down on the seat next to me. As soon as I set the phone down, that unnerving feeling that I was being watched returned, and I looked around trying to find out who the culprit was. My gaze drifted to the billowing curtains in the attic window of the house, and there I saw him. His dark, fiery eyes burning through my soul with utter contempt. His pale skin only looked lighter next to his dark hair, and his even darker eyes and the scowl on his face said he did not want me anywhere near that house. From what I could see, he was just a little boy that looked to be probably about the age of 10 or 11. But what I saw before me was no longer a little boy, but something pure evil. I felt chills running throughout my body, and every hair was standing on end as I stared back into his soulless eyes. I was locked in his gaze, and I felt like I was on fire as we sat there locked in this eternal death stare. I heard something scream at me, "Leave now." I threw my car into reverse as quickly as I could, and I peeled out of the driveway like a bat out of hell. I managed to find my way right to my friend's house this time, and I parked in front of her house and sat there for just a minute trying to process what I'd just seen. I saw the girls coming out to get into one of the other vehicles now that I was there so that we could leave, and so I got out of the car and I walked up to them. My friend asked me what was wrong because she could see that I was visibly shaken, so I explained what just happened, but before I could even tell her which house, she knew exactly what and where it was. She then told me a story, and this is just a story because I have never been able to confirm it, but it was about a little boy that was about 10 or 11 years old that lived in that house. He was into a lot of dark things kind of like the occult and playing with Ouija boards, and he ended up going crazy and killing his whole family in the house. Because of how haunted the house is by his ghost and so many other spirits, that house now has had to be condemned, and that's why it is boarded up. This next story is set at one of my favorite stores of an unnamed pizza place that I used to work at. This store was well known among its employees for being haunted and would have things happen in it almost daily. This one story, though, is by far one of my favorite ghost stories that happened to me in that store. Like every other day, I would come in to work earlier than the store opened to get things prepared for the day. Get the dough proofed, get vegetables prepared, and everything set up. As I would come in the door, I would lock the door behind me so that I wouldn't have anyone come in and try to rob me or something. I walked back towards the walk-in fridge that day to pull out all the dough to get it put into the proofer. And as I started pushing the dough into the proofer, I kept hearing some slight noises coming from the dining room area of the store. It sounded like whispering coming from the front of the store. I walked out to the dining room, which was a small area that had about 5 tables and just 2 bathrooms in it. Wasn't difficult to see the whole area. Just as I got to the dining area, the whispering stopped, but I looked around to see if I could see anything causing it and found nothing. There were no people outside the store either that could be causing the noise. I walked back to continue working and started pushing the dough into the proofer again. Just as I got the door open to the proofer and started pushing the carts in again, I heard the whispering coming from the dining room again, this time getting a bit louder every few seconds if I tried to ignore it. I walked back there quickly and investigated each bathroom and around each table in the dining room to see what it was that could be making these noises. And I found nothing. I went back to the back of the store and turned on the oven and the overhead fans to drown out the whispering so it wouldn't distract me anymore, and went about my business. After a while, I went to the walk-in fridge to pull out all the vegetables and stuff for the make table that we use to make all of the pizzas. I kept feeling while I was in there like I was not alone in the fridge and like someone was standing near me. But I just tried to ignore it and get it done. All of a sudden, what we call the reach-in door for us to grab stuff out of the walk-in fridge suddenly opened and shut quickly on its own. This startled me, so I spun around from what I was grabbing on the shelf behind me and stared at the reach-in door, which was glass, so I could see outside of it, and I could see that there was no one there to open it. I walked to the walk-in door and pushed it open so I could check around out by the make table to see if I could see anyone else out there. There was no one there. As I went to go back into the walk-in fridge, the alarm for the proofers went off, scaring me in the process. I grabbed the door and began to pull the rack out, and just then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone in the dining room. I turned just in time to see a tall man in a dark black trench coat, wearing a black cowboy hat, walking into a wall. I dropped what I was doing and ran for that area as fast as I could. I looked around outside and inside the store, and there was not one person in the vicinity of the store at that time. The interesting thing about this incident and about the store is that the small town and the highway that this store was built on runs along the Oregon Trail. A lot of places along this highway are haunted, but this is the first time that I have ever seen a full-bodied cowboy apparition. So if these kind of stories are the kind that interest you and you like to listen to ghost stories or the paranormal, please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. We post 1 to 2 times a week. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.